Okay, it is Thursday, December 10th, 2020, and this is for Regional Cuisine today. We are still in the Midwest unit. We are just finishing up our last week of the Midwest states. So today's demo is going to be very fun, very unhealthy version of Oreos, which is the deep fried Oreos, right? So we've been talking a lot in class about fair foods, carnivals and things like that. So you have county fairs and state fairs. Tip in a traditional year, right? Minus the COVID. So deep fried Oreos is definitely one of those fair staple kind of foods that are super easy to do. Okay. So we're going to be making a batter mixture. I've got my deep fryer, my little fryer set up over here, so I'll be showing you in a second. And that's already preheated to 375, just to make sure that it's really good and hot beforehand. And when we're doing the Oreos themselves, we're going to be doing just a few at a time so it doesn't overload the small fryer. You can do this in a pan on the stove, a little bit of oil, at least 3 inches on top of that oil to make sure that you don't have anything overflow. Okay? Nice, heavy, wide bottom pan. So what I've got here is just a mixing bowl and a whisk, right? And we're going to be making our batter. So we're going to be starting off with an egg, some milk. All right, so I've got just one egg right here, one large egg. I'm going to crack that on the counter. And that's going to go in the bowl first so we can check our egg and make sure that we don't have any shell pieces and that the egg is good before we add in the other ingredients, right? So start breaking up that yolk. This recipe is also going to get 1 cup of whole milk. So this is going to be our wet, right, to start off with. So I'm going to blend that. This is also going to get 2 teaspoons worth of vegetable oil. So we're going to be frying in oil and a little oil in the batter. So that's why I said, calorie-wise, this is, not the best for that. But so 2 teaspoons of vegetable oil, and it's best to measure off to the side so you don't overflow it. Make this easy. That way we don't get too much. And 2. Okay. So a little oil in the batter is going to help bring our pancake mixture together. So this is just the wet, right? So this is just the egg, the milk, and the oil. Give it a really good whisk to make sure everything's really incorporated in, okay? And then we're going to be adding in just a pancake mix, right? So I've got here today just Bisquick, right? Original pancake baking mix. I like this one. This is the one that I use for everything else, using it for baking biscuits, all kinds of things. Dumplings on top of stews. So I'm just going to pull this out of the box and make it a little bit easier to measure. Right? And when you're measuring this, you want to get 1 cup of the pancake mix that we're going to add into here. And we're using a whisk because we want to make sure that we get all the lumps out of our batter. So we've got a 1 cup measure here. So I'm going to scoop this. That's why it's easier to take it out of that box, right? And then I'm just going to level off this measure at the top. Okay, so scoop that. Nice level measurement. Okay, so we're not using too much. And then this will go back into the box and seal it up good. If you want your pancake mix to last a little longer too, you can always put it into a Ziploc bag so that nothing, no little bugs or anything get into it. Okay, so when you're mixing your batter, so make sure you're scraping the sides of that bowl really well and the bottom. And I find it helps to spin the bowl. Right? So keep moving around. We want to get this as lump-free as we can get it. And this is a fairly thin batter. And you can use this to fry all kinds of cookies and things, candy bars and stuff. Get that really mixed up good. Okay, like I said, it is a thin batter. It's not super thick and pasty. There. But we want to check and see how well it coats. Now this is where it gets a little tricky, right? Because I want to see if it'll coat well to the back of the spoon. So this is a little bit probably too thin for what I'd like for sticking to the cookies. So I'm going to add a little bit more mix. And that's one thing to keep in mind with recipes, right? Is that sometimes you have to go by eye and by texture and not just the measurement, especially when we're not doing something by weight, right? So I just put in another good tablespoon or so of the pancake mix. just to get this a little thicker, right? And a good way to check this too is to take and dip a cookie in and see how well it sticks and just fry one to start off with, okay? So we're gonna let this sit for a couple of minutes because I want this to absorb, all that pancake mix to absorb in all that liquid, okay? That's gonna make sure that it's lump-free, but it gives it a chance to thicken up just a little bit too, okay? Now, when it comes to the cookie part of this, I'm gonna be using, traditional Oreos today. But I wanna be able to finish these off as well with a little powdered sugar at the end. So I wanna have that set and ready to go ahead of time. So that way I can hit it with the powdered sugar as soon as it comes out of the fryer. Because once you pull something out of the fryer, that's when you season things, salt them, French fries, stuff like that. When it's something sweet like this, that's the best time to put on the powdered sugar because it'll stick right to that oil. So what I've got here is just a little hand crank sifter, right? It's got a little wire mesh on the bottom. This one's one of my older antique ones. So I'm gonna pour some powdered sugar in there, but because this can go straight through, it's best to put a bowl underneath. You can use a little hand sifter for this also. And I'm just using a little confectioner sugar. Right in. Don't need much. Half a cup or a cup. Whatever you don't use, you can put back in the bag, right? And then this way, I'll be able to make it snow on top of the Oreos as soon as they come out of the fryer. Okay. So I'm just going to thickness of this. So this is looking pretty good now. It's got a little bit better consistency to it, adding that extra pancake batter, right? So now I've got a little texture. I don't want it to run right off of the whisk immediately. You can check too how well it coats the back of a spoon, right? So if it can coat the back of a spoon, it will coat the Oreo cookie. Now with the Oreos, one thing you want to do is get them good and cold. So I just took this package out of the freezer. So I've had these in the freezer since yesterday, so they're really good and cold to the touch. This way they'll fry a little bit better, okay? They'll hold up better under that heat, and your filling will stay intact too, okay? So now to fry them, move some stuff out of the way here. Like I said, I've got my little fryer set up here. I've also got a tray, some paper towel, right, and a pair of tongs for taking these out. So I've got my fryer basket in the fryer. But normally what I would do is I would put things in the basket and then drop it in. In this instance, if I do that, this batter is going to stick to the bottom of this basket. So I'm going to take and drop the basket down in, use my tongs to put the cookies in, and that way they won't get stuck to the basket. But I'll be able to use the basket to lift them up out onto the paper towel lined cookie sheet to dry, okay, and to absorb that extra oil. So we've got our mix here, right? Like I said, it's nice. It's, fairly lump-free. Thickness to it. All right. And you can let pancake batter sit for a while. You can do this a couple hours ahead. Just stick it in the fridge. It'll be fine. It holds up really well. And you want to do just a couple cookies at a time. Okay. We don't want to overwhelm this. And another good trick is, see how they float on the top, right? I know my batter's thick enough to coat. Okay. So we're going to use our pair of tongs. And we want to make sure that these get coated really well. Okay. And then I'm going to bring the bowl right up to the fryer. Otherwise, it's going to drip all over the place, right? So we're going to come in and just grab a cookie by the edge. And I'm just going to drop it in. A couple of seconds for each one. Just make sure they're coated well. And these only take about 2 minutes to fry, okay? So what you want to look for while you're doing this is that, I'm going to bring in closer so you can start to see, right? Is to flip them. Okay? So after about 30 seconds or so, flip them so that they will puff up evenly on both sides. Now you find that those first ones cook a little faster. You don't have to use the basket. You can use your tongs just to pull those out. Okay. And then set them on the paper towel to absorb that excess oil. Okay. Now, like I said, these are not the healthiest of cookies, but they are pretty darn tasty. So now that we've got them out of the fryer, like I said, just do small batches at a time. Right? You can fry these as you're ready to eat them as well. Okay. And we've got our little powdered sugar sifter here. Snow all over, and you can get powdered sugar all over everything. Okay. Flip them over and get a little on the back side. Just slide them around. Okay. Super easy to do. So I'm just going to let those cool for a couple seconds. They are pretty hot. I'll put these back here. Now, one thing I noticed is that, you know, it still seems just a touch thin on the batter. You can add in just a little bit more mix. So I'm going to add in probably one more spoonful for the second batch. So that's why it's good to do a little test, right? Test a couple of them first. And then you can do more. Right? Don't worry, those won't go to waste. Like I said, I want to have a little bit better coverage on the cookie. Okay. Now you can take all kinds of things and freeze them and do this. So deep fried Twinkies, candy bars like Milky Ways and things are great for this. You can also deep fry butter, right? Take a frozen stick of butter and you can deep fry that. Okay. So we're going to put our cookies in. So we've got 4 of them there again. And just make sure to coat them well. Yeah, and this one coated a little bit better this time now. We want to have good coverage and make sure that it's not any bare spots, okay? And then just into the fryer. So remember, keeping that basket drop down in, right? There we go. That's looking better. And you get a little whoosh every time that you put them in. That's normal. And then waiting until about a minute, 30 seconds to a minute, right? And then flip those first ones so you get a nice puff on each side, okay? You don't flip them over. They will cook through, but they're not going to look as nice, okay? All right. We're going to pull out the second batch. Like I said, they only take about 2 minutes total per cookie. Right onto the tray with the paper towel. Yeah, see, those ones look a little bit better, right? Just slightly thicker on the batter. So that's why you always want to run a test batch on your fried foods. You know, just fry one individual cookie. And you don't want to leave them in there too long because then they'll just start absorbing extra oil that you don't want. Okay. Take our powdered sugar. That's it. Okay. So now I want to show you on the inside. So this is one that's been out from the first batch. Is that you still keep the texture of the cookie. So by freezing them, they will still have that cookie layering effect inside, right? So you'll still be able to see the chocolate Oreo cookie plus the cream filling, okay? If you do them straight from the package, you might get a little bit more melting effect. They'll still work, but they are better if you can put them in the freezer for at least a couple hours first, okay? So that is your deep fried Oreos for today, but a simple batter that you can use to fry a whole bunch of stuff, all right? Just be careful, remember, keeping, if you're doing it in a pot of oil on the stove, just a little bit of oil in a heavy pan and at least 3 inches above it so that when it floats up like that, you have that space for it to give. And always have tongs and things handy.